Welcome to the God is Not an Asshole podcast. If you are one of the many people done with religious dogmatism, hang on. You might sense transcendence, but your church or other faith community never seem to get off the ground. You realize that honoring your conscience means more than fitting in and keeping hard-to-explain rules? Hang on. You could probably think of the goodness in your tradition, and you tried your best to save that baby, but there's so much bathwater. Join your hosts, David Norman Moore Jr. in California and Carrie Connolly in New Jersey, who are collaborating to bring on guests who have found life on the other side of fundamentalism. Guests with stories of how they have liberated themselves from beliefs that divide us from each other. None of our guests' narratives are identical, but we hope you'll find something in common with each of them. We invite you to experience our common bond as we all inspire even more of us to embrace the true self.
Hey everybody, Carrie and I are here with Mahip Rathore. He is a meditation teacher and a therapist in Santa Barbara. Mahip grew up in central India, and what a story. What a ride he's been on. He's a bit of a polymath. He practiced law. He transitioned to psychology. He went to Eastern Illinois University and Tennessee State University, where he got his PhD in counseling psychology. His research is focused on the practice of mindfulness and its metacognitive mechanisms, development of wisdom through coping with difficult life situations, impact of decentering on self-transcendence or non-dual awakening. I guess with that, we'd never guess that you're from India, right? But it is, it is very special to have you also as a neighbor. And I know you've been a listener to this podcast, so you know what it's all about. We're about dethroning the ego, if you will, in terms of adherence to belief systems that separate us. And so I just want to thank you for being and for being present with us right now. Just tell us a little bit about where you're coming from. I mean, you have an amazing story, and I wouldn't even know where to start as far as asking questions. You're married. You're also a new father. Relatively new. Aashray is how old now?
17 and a half months.
17 and a half months.
Yeah.
Well, tell us a little bit about why you accepted an invitation to be on God is Not an Asshole.
So, first of all, thank you so much for inviting me, David. It's always a pleasure to see you when I'm out for a walk. It's a very delicious experience to be around you. So just when I say start there, I think then that is one of the reasons I said yes.
Namaste.
I want to spend more time with you, and I want to hang out with you. I love talking about spiritual experiences. I love talking about God. I love talking about personal life experiences. And that's currently my life, that I enjoy these explorations. And it's just out of curiosity and out of excitement, I said yes to your podcast.
Now, speaking of spiritual experiences, I hope I don't throw you with this one, but I remember it was in December. You told me about something about an encounter you had. Do you know what I'm referencing?
I think I know, and also I don't remember which one I went for. There were maybe the one from, I don't know, 10 years ago that I count as my first more prominent spiritual experience when I was back in India, which is what led to my transition.
Well, tell us about that one.
Okay. Yeah. So this is me 10 years, 11 years ago. And I'm in a very anxious and depressed state after having left legal practice, and after having done it for 1.5 years, which is not long, but if you do it every day, including Saturdays and Sundays, it can put you down. And then as I took a break, and I was living with these roommates who happened to go to their home for Ramadan, I was somehow accidentally alone. And I was alone for the first time in my life because I grew up in such a collectivistic culture. I always had either family or roommates. In my law school, so this is me like 24 years old or so, 23, I guess. And I was just journaling. I was just reflecting, reading some articles, mostly to improve my English. Because at that point, my goal was to study more and get out of India to study masters in law. Did not have any clarity. And then somehow one evening, after spending few days just by myself, I was looking at the stars. I was alone, looking on my chair, and I was just looking outside the window. And I cannot describe what really happened, as if I, I as a person, completely disappeared, and there was no thing. There's no thought, no memory, no objective experience. And I do not know, because I was alone, whether it was just 5, 6 minutes or whether it was 3, 4 hours. I do not know. All I remember is coming out of that or coming back to this plane and suddenly feeling, not even remembering my name, not even remembering anything, completely empty. And as I looked at my hands, I realized, wow, there is a body here. And that means I must have some origin. This body must have come from somewhere. That means I have some parents. I could not remember who they were. I could not remember anything. It was blank. How I was feeling was absolute ecstasy and bliss. And I was at the peace was unmatched. And this is me never having done anything at that time. Now I have done a lot of retreats, I guess, but this is me never having gone to a temple without being forced by family, never having meditated, never having done anything. I grew up, it was all in my face, so I never was into God or anything religious or spiritual. So I was supposed to push these things away. And I was just studying English, to improve my English. So my goal was not even to look for something spiritual or out of this world. I was just hanging out, and it just hit me. And it felt as if there were no memories, but it felt as if thousands, millions of lifetimes just went by. And I just had an instant change in my perspective. I just started looking at Mahip from the outside, as if it was kind of funny, like after a few minutes, at least 6, 7 minutes, that's when I remembered, oh, my name is Mahip. Oh, this is my kind of feeling. Oh, these are my parents. Oh, yeah. That's the life. This is where we are. Okay. So I was just like integrating that experience, and I was in ecstasy or like this insane amount of bliss for the next many months. I was just suddenly, and I was very introvert. I had stage fear, and I used to like have panic attacks while speaking in public. Throughout law school, I avoided every single thing. The one interview I had in law school, I just panicked and I couldn't get a job. So I found this law firm in my hometown. That's where I was practicing. So now this guy suddenly I just wanted to talk and be with people. I was fearless. I don't know how all fear went away. And I was just so happy. And I just knew everything. I can't describe. Somehow I felt I just know. I just know everything. I was happy. That's the easiest way to describe it. Thank you for asking. I love going back to that. It's just very, yeah, a happy place, which is always here. At that time, I did not realize it's always here.
Did you experience any disequilibrium as a result of this, being kind of back in a body, so to speak, right? Because I think that I know so many people, myself included, who go through what many people would call a spiritual awakening. And it can be very disorienting, and it can be in a lot of ways catastrophic to their lives, because all of a sudden their lives kind of don't align with their consciousness now. And they have to make those adjustments, which can be really painful, really painful. relationships, jobs, all sorts of things all of a sudden no longer align. So did you experience anything like that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I would say I
He says with certainty.
it's just, and I would say like, I I felt fine. I felt like, oh, this is why I felt, oh, this makes sense. This is natural. This is who I am. But the world was not, my environment was not ready for that. So I would say there was a friction because they remembered the Mahip. They wanted to see the Mahip. And I was like, I am no longer this. I cannot be that for you.
Yeah.
Whoever I was dating, I just, my friends, like almost everything broke apart. And my parents was actually open at that time because I was living with them for that year of depression during the legal practice. So then they were seeing what I was going through. So they were very open at this stage. Childhood was different, but at this stage they were really open because I was being genuine and open. But my friends from law school, the place I was working, were like, are you crazy? And even the psychologist I met, because this decision to study psychology or go in psychology came right after this experience. I'm like, okay, this is what's going to happen, and this is the path. This is like the first time I heard my soul. My soul spoke to me, sort of feeling, even though I am the soul, but in language, I have to say, the soul spoke through me. And I heard it. Before that, I was hearing cultural conditioning, parental pressure, societal pressure. So, of course, there was a lot of resistance in the environment. And
you said something really interesting in answering me. You said, when you were describing the experience, you said, yeah, I can't be that Mahip for you anymore, right? A key phrase for you, right? Like that so much of the construct of our personalities is developed for other people. And I think when that act of discovering what it is that we're supposed to be, or we are for ourselves, right? It's a terrifying thing especially because society tells us we're not supposed to do that. We're not supposed to live that, quote, selfishly, right? So do you have any words of wisdom for how we can maybe approach that construct that we're not supposed to live for ourselves?
Thank you so much. That's such a wonderful question. I feel it's a struggle for the personal I. It's a struggle for Mahip. It's a challenge for Mahip to be in the world. However, it's the most natural state for me, who I really am. This is what I'm here for. This is me. So it's like the clothes I'm wearing will have hard time fitting with the clothes of the world, you know. But I'm okay. I know I'm not my clothes.
So Mahip, have you ever? I mean, this is some people's experience. Have you ever, after going through this this illumination, this transformation, ever felt like it might be advantageous to change your name so that you were no longer Mahip?
Huh. That's such an interesting question. I've never thought about that. Maybe, but I don't feel the need. I actually like Mahip. It's like, this is my favorite clothes so far. So, yeah,
I'm just curious because people do that. People just feel like they're so attached to something that that the people around them, are comfortable with. That Carrie used the word disequilibrium, and sometimes people, instead of struggling to redefine everything about themselves, feel like it's a little bit easier to just find a name that is I just ask that because I have several people in my own family who have done that. So I just wonder.
Yeah. Thank you. Now when I reflect more, it's like, see, after 23, 24 years of not knowing who I am, of living this life of other people defining me, Mahip will be the doctor, Mahip will be this, Mahip you should do this. Like, that was painful. So like I'm living in this prison for 24 years. And then this, for the first time, I got it. This is me. And then that made me unstoppable. I became so confident, and I won't change a thing for anyone. That's like, finally, I got it. I got it. This is me. So I would say I just went on with it. And in the last 10 years, I kept on being myself. I kept on speaking my truth. I kept on living my truth, and I kept on expressing it. Like, this is me. Nothing can touch it. That's the kind of, I know it might sound egoistic or so, but this is my true nature. Why would I change anything? This is, it's not the person I'm talking about. It's the light within that I'm talking about. It's unchangeable. So I just keep going back to that. And then the environment ended up changing. I live a completely different life. Below that very toxic environment, and I'm living in this amazing, half of my friends are therapists, my wife is like a rabbi, and I have these she's like a spiritual counselor, so like my life is surrounded by these amazing people who see me for who I am, who love me for who I am. And my parents have grown to love me for who I am also in this process of being with me. My family has grown to love me, and they accept me. They have a newfound they have found a new me, and they adore it. So I didn't have to change. They caught up with me. The environment caught up with me. That's all I want to say. I didn't have to change anything. I just kept on being myself.
Lovely.
Thank you for the question.
What advice, or what I guess what advice do you have for somebody who is still in the thick of that transformation, right? Because I actually do really believe, and I know other spiritual teachers teach this, that right now the earth is kind of going through an ascension process, right? This is what a lot of spiritual teachers are talking about things like the split between 3D and 5D and moving into a new dimension kind of thing. And that transition period of disequilibrium when you're in it, and that can sometimes last quite a bit, I'm curious to know, what advice do you have for people who are in the very practical reality? Because it's one thing to say, like, well, just know who you are, right? And that's a very valid, very, very true thing. But in the practical day-to-day, when you're shuffling kids around or you're dealing with the dissolution of a marriage, which may happen for some people, case in point, when you're talking about changing careers, right? Which means it could mean a practical lived experience of financial struggle, or, the day-to-day embodied experience that we still have to live in and have, even as we're souls who are encased in this body. What advice do you have for those of us who are going through that, in that turbulence, and we're not yet on that other side where we're like, oh, this is amazing. Life caught up with my spiritual development.
So thank you for the question. And I would say I am in that also. I'm in there financially and so many other ways. I have found a really good partner. So I think I'm really grateful to have a few things are pretty well. And I'm still, as the stage of my life, I'm only 35, I haven't figured out a lot of things. So I count myself to be in the same boat. And I want to say, what helps me? I share my experience. I don't want to give advice to anyone. I would say what worked for me is I kept on going back to my intuition. Intuition is like intuition, inner teachers. So whether I meet these other I have teachers and mentors. I talk with them. I receive their advice and suggestions and listen to their experiences. And I see, learn from life, my own experiences. And then I check in what does my intuition says? What does my gut say? So I check in the moment. I keep going back again and again to that intuitive knowing. And I make decisions and actions from that point. That's one thing that helps me, and trust and keep trusting that intuition again and again. Other piece, which is very helpful for me, is going back to remembering who I really am. And I have forgotten so many times, and I keep forgetting still. I know right now I'm so present. You're asking, so I get into this more meditative place, I guess. But when I'm changing a diaper, when I'm like really like stressed and not sleep deprived, and I lose it. So it's just like I remind myself by like this is if this is I take this metaphor of a dream. There's a dream going on. In that dream, there's a character that I feel like is me. There are other people. There's this whole sky and grass. There's so much cars and stuff. Stuff is there. What's so interesting is like all of that is
Mahip,
made up of. Oh,
is the experience that you described of yourself.
yeah.
There are some people who go through a protracted process. It's like their life starts as an egg, a chrysalis, and after the pupa, there's this manifestation of a metamorphosis that has been underway the whole time, but it's taken time. But your experience, I don't, I have no way of measuring this or giving, statistics on it. But I think, if I had to guess, I think it is rarer than some people's transformations. I think of Eckhart Tolle, who woke up on a park bench and he was a different person.
Yeah.
Yours sounds more like that than, some people who might take months or years, right? So can you define that in any way? What is that?
That's so interesting. I mean, I thought I put myself in the other category, but I think when I'm sharing the story, I'm really jumping through the 10 years because a lot of it was sudden. Yes, I think there are aspects that may sound like Eckhart Tolle. I really had a personality switch. I really had. So a lot of it switched in a day. So there is element of that for sure. And then I had to still work for the other half, I would say. And then so going to these meditation retreats, I kept on having more and more openings. I kept on letting go of more of Mahip. I kept on having very painful past life memories and experiences that used to just randomly show up in my meditations or out of nowhere during my drive. And I had to cry it out. I had to release it. So it just was, and it sometimes still happens. It's just like I no longer take it personally or seriously. That has changed. So that's why this life has become very easy for me to like respond to. The pain has become very easy to respond to in the last 5-6 years. But that just started a process of like unpeeling of the onion happened. Half of it got unpeeled in that one incident. And the other half took, I think I would say, another 7-8 years. And now I feel like, okay, now I'm no longer the onion. So it's okay. It can peel or unpeel, doesn't matter.
I know. I have a question. I love that. I'm no longer the onion. I love that. I have a question about past lives because that's something that I've been fascinated with and have had my own experiences with that. And I'm really curious to know, how do you tell the difference between something that's coming up and you're like, well, where did that come from? And I'm feeling all of a sudden anger, or I'm feeling this thing, or I have this intense fear of something that I don't know because there's nothing in my actual life, right? Like, how do you tell the difference between something that's just psychopathology compared to something that is past life? issues,
Yeah.
energy and templates from past lives that you've brought forward. I would love to hear what you have to say about that.
Yeah. Thank you so much for the question. So first of all, I am a psychologist. So there is a part of my mind that was judging my own, that was pathologizing my own experiences. There was a long time they were blocked because I was judging them. And I was not sharing with other people too. Because I was like, oh my, I'm crazy. Something's wrong with me. That happened me a few years ago and I was not even sharing. Like, oh God, this is too much. However, I started accepting and loving and embracing them. And I allowed Mahip to be the vessel. Or in other words, I allowed Mahip to be the canvas. And all these lives to be there, to be colors on this canvas. So when it happens, I mostly go into very high emotional, intense states, and I have to cry. I end up crying really, like, and sometimes I have like really, I have to just lie down on the bed and like completely move around, and like it's very painful to look at from the outside. I know from my partners who were with me in those times. Sometimes it happens with another person around. And I actually have a great time internally because I feel like, oh, thank God, was such a heavy stone. Like it was in the system. Like, thank you for getting it out. It's exhausting for the body, but it's also so freeing at the end. I know it's just coming up. And Mahip has an opportunity to allow this past life, which has come to surface, to allow it to just go and be free. So I thank them. Thank you for choosing Mahip to be your vessel. And you can have your experience. You can complete what was not incomplete through Mahip. So Mahip that's why I said Mahip is my best clothes. My favorite dream is Mahip because all the past dreams can come through him. That's the gift.
I love that. My favorite dream. I think that's the name of your podcast episode. My favorite dream. That's good. I love that.
Thank you so much for being here today. We are people who have left behind performance-based religion and the shame that comes with it. Maybe you have a personal liberation story to tell and we want to know about it. Please contact us on Twitter at God is not an asshole or text 805-703-8393 because the world needs to know that God is not an asshole.